Illinois Stories is brought to you by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by the support of viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to Illinois Stories. I'm Mark McDonald in Springfield at the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Museum, where the rivalry, Cardinals versus the Cubs, is up in the exhibit hall here and will be until the end of the year. State historian Sam Wheeler had a lot to do with putting this together, and I'll bet it was fun because you got to research some of the best places in the country, didn't you?
It was a blast. A lifelong baseball fan myself, and so working with the St. Louis Cardinals, the Chicago Cubs, the National Baseball Hall of Fame, they opened up their vaults to us, and I got to tell you, it was jaw-dropping at times.
It's fantastic, and I wanted to start here because we're looking at a very early cartoon from the 1860 election in which Lincoln prevailed, and there's a tie-in between Lincoln, which the museum that we're in here, and the sport of baseball, and that's what we're looking at. Right behind your, under your shoulder there is Mr. Lincoln himself holding the baseball, and this is one of the early tie-ins of baseball with national mood, isn't it?
That's right. In 1860, during that four-way presidential election that was so contentious, for the first time in American history, the political cartoonist used baseball as a metaphor for describing a presidential election. And so it shows the Abraham Lincoln's rise to political prominence. It paralleled the rise of baseball in the national mind. A lot of the quotes you'll see on this political cartoon, they're using the language of baseball. A foul ball, a strike, a shortstop, a home run. One of the candidates says that he was skunked. And so it shows that, you know, folks understand what that language means by 1860.
And the subtitle is Abraham winning the ball. So, and he says he hit a home run. He says
it's a home run.
Okay.
That's right.
Well, let's move on down this way because it's fantastic. We go through. This is a timeline of the two teams here, and every time I see one of these photographs or one of these items here, I think to myself, how many things you must have had to go through, and how many things you had to pass up, because not everything can fit into this exhibit, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's the hard part. Is we could have filled this gallery up 2 or 3 or 4 different times, but we had to go through and we had to make hard decisions, and some things didn't make the cut. But you'll see in this gallery more than 100 objects. You will see probably over 100 photos documenting the St. Louis Cardinals, Chicago Cub, more than century-long rivalry.
You know, it starts way back in Rockford, though, and Cap Anson was one of the very early Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
He may have been the first one elected in, but this is his contract when he played for the Rockford team.
Yeah, it's the only piece in this exhibit that comes from our collection here at the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library. It's his very first professional baseball contract he signed in 1871 as a 19-year-old young man playing for a Rockford professional baseball team. It's a 4-page contract. It's filled with what we would call today morals clauses. Don't drink, don't smoke, don't fight. Remember that the object of what you're doing on the field is to win the game. That's coded language for no gambling. And so, you know, a piece like this is not just a piece of, you know, baseball history or the Chicago Cubs franchise. He goes on to be one of the best 19th century ball players, a Cub legend today. But it's also a piece of Illinois history. In 1871, as that Rockford team was traveling to Chicago to play the Chicago team, they see the flames from the Great Chicago Fire. They turn around, they go back to Rockford. That Chicago team, it disrupts 2 months of their season, and just a brutal time in Chicago history. But baseball, sports, time and time again, cities rally. The Chicago club ended up winning their version of the pennant that year.
I'll be darned. As a historian, it brings back to mind, everything's connected, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, everything in history is connected in some way or another.
It's, to make that connection was really cool.
Let's go look at these uniforms over here, and boy, have they changed. We're talking about, can you imagine wearing something like this in St. Louis in July?
No, I cannot. Those are wool.
Oh my God.
This is what they would call a sort of a warm-up jacket from the period, but my goodness, you know, I know how hot it gets here.
1903, this would have been the year before the World's Fair came to St. Louis. You can see they dressed very formally back then, even the baseball players.
Very nice, isn't it? Double-breasted.
And this is what the Cubs were in at about the same time, I guess. This is 1909.
Yeah, the year after they won the World Series. That's a jersey on the Cubs squad. And again, wool, and even in Chicago, I wouldn't want to be wearing that in a hot August day.
And we'll get to see how, the nice thing about an exhibit like this is you get to see how everything changes over the decades. And the changes are really remarkable.
They really are.
Let's just go to this. Here we've got the Cardinals. This light over here is from the original Sportsman's Park, before Busch Stadium even existed.
That's right, yeah, a light from Sportsman's Parks. Some of the viewers might remember that. But yeah, this is our little section in this exhibit where we don't talk just about the ball players that made history, but also the stadiums played a huge role in this rivalry.
Remember the red seats in Busch Stadium?
I do. I sat in some of those seats many times.
They weren't very comfortable, but they sure were pretty.
Yeah, you know, we were cognizant throughout this exhibit that, you know, the rivalry is all about the fans who care deeply about it, and those family memories they made sitting in those chairs watching a ball game in a place like St. Louis.
Yeah, yeah. And right next door, Sam, there's some interesting document here about the history of Wrigley Field. People might think, oh, the Wrigleys, they always owned that property, they always, you know, but they had a little lease going on here, and they still do, I guess, maybe.
It is one of the real treasures of the Chicago Cubs collection today. And in 1913, they had to lease the land that they ended up building Wrigley Field on. And that's this version of the lease is one of the renewal pieces that is a real landmark today. I mean, my goodness, we've been to Wrigley Field, and that's an awesome facility.
And there's a brick from Wrigley Field right there.
A brick from Wrigley Field, and I'll tell you, the rivalry is always transforming. It's a fluid thing, and today Wrigley Field, with all the renovations they've done, it actually looks a little bit different than it did way back in the early 20th century.
And remember the flap? I think it was in the 80s. It may have been the 90s, but they're 88. There was a time when the people in Chicago thought that lighting up Wrigley Field at night was going to be either a sacrilege or the greatest thing that ever happened.
Yeah, they were originally going to put lights in Wrigley Field during World War II, and they ended up donating those lights elsewhere. And it happens. They don't get lights at Wrigley Field until 1988. The very first game, I remember staying up and watching it. It got rained out. And, yeah, it was a little bit of
sending a
controversy.
message here, isn't he?
Yeah.
Citizens United for Baseball on Sunshine.
That's right.
That. Okay. And over here, now you had talked about women in baseball in these two teams too. And some I never knew. The woman on the right, Helene Robinson Britton, at one time owned the St. Louis Cardinals?
Yeah, she's the first female owner of a major league franchise, and she owned the St. Louis Cardinals early on. We have an awesome story to tell about women in baseball, and the Cubs have their own story. Margaret Donahue started out as a stenographer in the Cubs organization in the early 20th century. By the time she retired in 1958, she was vice president of the organization.
No kidding.
Worked her way up, and in this exhibit, we have her gold lifetime pass. It's a little card that she was presented with that she could come to a ball game for the rest of her life. And
you know what? She can go to any game she wants, American or National League, any park she wants to go, and she can walk right in. Isn't that something?
And it's one of the few pieces in this exhibit we borrowed from a private family. It was from Margaret Donahue's family. The Chicago Cubs put us in contact with her, and they were so excited to have her included in this exhibit, and we are too.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, okay, you got some interactive things too. I love this because you can go to, of course, Illinois and find out where the Cubs cards, what the percentage of fandom is, but you can also go anywhere in the country, can't you?
That's
you can
right.
Tap on it. Why don't you pick out for us? Pick out a place, say, in central Illinois, and let's just see what the mix of Cards Cubs fans
Yeah,
is.
so the Chicago Tribune was, we were able to use this map from a lot of their research. So in Sangamon County, you can see what the distribution is.
53% Cardinal fans, 25% Cub fans. I would have guessed about 2 to 1 myself.
We lean a little bit, to the Cardinals. But what's cool about this map, they pulled all this data from Facebook pages, and they just created an algorithm, and so you can click on any county in the United
Go to
States and you can
Cubs,
see what the
4.4,
rivalry
or
is.
go to Utah, 4.4% of the people there are Cubs fans, mostly Yankees fans. Isn't that something?
And, you know, I always like to see in Alaska who they're rooting for.
5% Cubs fans, Seattle Mariners. That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. They're the closest team. Yeah. Okay.
And, you know, the Yankees and the Red Sox are always really popular. They're always on
Yeah.
TV, so.
That's right. That's right. Now, this is something that was in the Cardinals' possession, but they had
Yeah.
nowhere to hang it, huh?
Yeah, this is a beautiful quilt. The craftsmanship on this is fantastic. And this was created for the 1928 Cardinals squad. And we borrowed this from the St. Louis Cardinal Hall of Fame Museum. They were so happy that we were able to find a place in our exhibit for this, because currently they don't have a space to display it. And so they were really excited we were able to find a spot
You know,
for
some of that was really a good team. Grover
Yeah.
Alexander pitched for that team. His name is upper left down
Hall
there.
of Famer.
Hall of Famer Jimmy Bottomley, who's from this area of Illinois, by the
Yep.
way, over in Nokomis. He's down here, and he's featured right in front of his.
Yeah, this
his
year in
signature
1928
here.
he won the MVP.
Yeah, he was a terrific player. So that was really a good team, a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Now, more interaction, if you would. Come over here, Sam, because this is interesting. The Cubs and card, no matter what you're a fan of, you can tap on one of these and you can play trivia.
That's right.
And as we can see, the Cubs fans are outscoring the Cardinals fans on the trivia score here. But let's just take some Cubs questions. What Cubs second baseman won the National League Most Valuable Player
Oh,
Award
this is a
in
good one.
1929? Well, Hornsby was a Cardinal at that time, right? Anson, he wasn't still playing in
Wasn't still
1929, was he? Mordecai Brown, Three Fingers? That's my guess.
Incorrect.
Incorrect. Did you know?
Yeah, it's Hornsby.
Is it Hornsby? He
Yeah.
was I'll be doggone. I thought that he was still a Cardinal at that time. Hornsby was one of those rare birds that played for both teams.
He did, and he became a legend
yeah.
for each team. He won an MVP award for the Cardinals and the Cubs.
And he managed the Cardinals.
He managed, and do you know that? And this is a stat we found as we were doing exhibit research. To this day, he still holds the single season hit record for both teams.
No kidding.
Yes.
I didn't know that. I thought by the time, and of course I'm a Cardinal fan, by the time he became a Cub, he was washed up. But that's not the way it was. Huh?
He's maybe one of the greatest right-hand hitters of all time.
Oh, yeah.
This is another great right-handed hitter from the Cubs franchise,
Hack Wilson. Man, he was aptly named because he really did hack, didn't he? He went after the ball.
That is a heavy bat that Hack used. When I grew up, you know, the RBI record, I always, knew this was 190 RBIs from Hack Wilson. Again, doing research for this exhibit, it turns out it's 191 RBIs that he drove in that
Wait a
season.
minute, he didn't get another RBI while you weren't looking.
So it turns out that the great researchers for Major League Baseball have gone back through the stats. They found he actually drove in another run that he didn't get credit for. So even in death, he is still driving in runs. That was an awesome season that he had.
Was Frankie Frisch? I think he was also a man. Actually, he got traded. I think he came to the Cardinals when Hornsby left, and these are his cleats.
Yeah, could you imagine wearing those?
Oh man.
He won the MVP in 1931. Helped him to several different World Series appearances. But again, we were talking about the changing technology over time. You'll see cleats from dating back to the early 20th century all the way up to the present. That's just another way that technology has changed.
Yeah, boy, and their comfort level must be so much better now.
Yeah.
And look at some of these, like look at this catcher's mitt, for instance.
Yep.
Now when you look at them, it looks like some kind of a, well, they're huge for one thing, but
Yep.
they're also very, very limber. I mean, they can really, and there's just a room for a ball, and if you don't catch it right in the pocket, you don't catch it.
Yeah, that catcher's mitt from the World War II era, that caught a lot of fastballs.
Yeah, that's what they were pitching then. Bob Feller and that whole bunch.
You know, we were talking about Rogers Hornsby. I wonder if we can take a look at this
Sure, we
jersey
can
here.
back up. You
My
bet.
goodness. This is, again, talking about technology and players' comfort level. We talked about the wool jerseys, but look how beat up this jersey is. It's been
And this is
stitched up.
Hornsby's Cub jersey.
This is a jersey that's been beat up. It's been patched. There's a couple stains on it.
There's some blood stains on there. He was a tough guy.
You
yeah.
bet. talking to our counterparts at the National Baseball Hall of Fame, back in the early 20th century, these players had to put a deposit on their jerseys at the beginning of the season, and at the end of the season, when they handed the jersey back in, they got their deposit back. And so today, obviously, you'll never see a jersey that's got all those patches and stains and those
today
sorts
a
of
player
things
goes
on
into
it.
the locker room and there's supposed to be a new jersey there, just hanging there every day for him, you know.
Yeah, but I love that jersey. Again, it's just a testament to hard-nosed baseball in a different era.
They were tough guys. Yeah. Let's walk around and see the other side of this, because this is too good to miss. This is another example of how these have changed. This is Lou Brock's jersey, and you can see this is probably from the 70s. Yep. But now they're wearing not cotton, but a
little polyester.
Polyester,
sort of
right.
Yeah,
much cooler.
Jersey from 1979, and Lou Brock, we recognize him in this exhibit as a lopsided trade, if you remember that. St. Louis Cardinals really benefited from that
and
one.
There's his base from his stolen base record.
That's right, 1974.
And I guess that was the Cardinals, or was that the Hall of Fame that had that, or do you remember?
Who gave us the base was the National Baseball Hall of Fame.
Yeah, of course, yeah. You guys were so lucky.
We really are.
While we're talking about that, let me ask you this question. Yeah. When you call the National Baseball Hall of Fame, I imagine I just suppose they're kind of a tough bunch to deal with, because they have an exclusive franchise, and they don't have to share if they don't want to. What was their response to you asking to go through their items and use them?
Yeah, when we launched this idea for the exhibit, I mean, we had to go out and find the collections, and the National Baseball Hall of Fame was right at the top of the list, as well as the Cardinals and the Cubs. I made cold phone calls. I Googled, and I tried to find the right person to get a hold of. And it never failed when I talked to somebody in Major League Baseball, the St. Louis Cardinals, the Cubs, or the National Baseball Hall of Fame. I pitched them the idea. I told them where I was from, and Abraham Lincoln opened all those doors. They had all been to our museum here in Springfield, and they all said wonderful things about it and said, yes, we want to play a part in this exhibit and help you out. And everyone that I talked to, including the National Baseball Hall of Fame, they had never really done anything like this with an outside organization. So felt really blessed, and the institution opened so many doors for us.
Sam, you can't talk about either one of these franchises without focusing in on number 6, Stan Musial, and Ernie Banks, Mr. Cub, right?
That's right.
You got to have some meat on those bones, and that's looking. I think we're looking at Stan Musial's jersey from 46, maybe?
From 1946.
1946.
This is probably my favorite piece in the entire exhibit. This is the jersey he wore in 1946. Now, in 1945, he was in the Navy during World War II. Didn't play Major League Baseball. He came back. He ended up winning an MVP award. He led the Cardinals to the World Series while he was wearing that jersey. And so that's not just a piece of Cardinal history or Major League Baseball history. It's really a piece of American history right there.
And can you imagine taking a year or two off and then coming back and winning the MVP? Just a little rust. Just knock a little rust off.
His face is the most prominent one on the Cardinal Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, no kidding.
For a reason.
And look what he had to look at. He was a center fielder for much of it. He played right field and first base too, but he's in center field using this mitt.
Yep, field and fly balls.
Wow, look at that. And it's all torn up. Look at the webbing.
Well used.
All torn up. That's amazing. And of course he was left-handed, so that's a southpaw mitt.
Yeah.
And then over here, of course, the Cubs revere Ernie Banks, call him Mr. Cub, which of course they should. And I guess he broke their color barrier, didn't he?
Yeah, Mr. Cub. Yeah, he was the first African-American ball player for the Chicago Cubs organization. He goes on to be a Hall of Famer, Mr. Cub, and one of the most revered figures, not just with the Cubs, but in Major League history. Right next to Ernie Banks is a bat that Tom Alston used when he played for the St. Louis Cardinals. He was the first African-American to play for the St. Louis Cardinals organization. Didn't go on to be a Hall of Famer.
No, he
Not
didn't.
like Ernie Banks.
In fact, I should know his name, but I don't. I guess he had a pretty short career.
Right.
And of course, we mentioned Lou Brock before because he was a Cub before he became a Cardinal. And this is interesting because this picture right up here has him in his Cub uniform.
That's right.
And my goodness, he looks so, of course he was young,
Yep.
1964, June 15th, when the trade was made.
Yep.
The Cardinals fans like to say that was the best trade in the history of the game, and I guess Cub fans think it's probably the worst trade in the history of the game.
Yeah, Cardinal fans were pretty happy with the way that one worked out.
Oh, and talk about that same trade. Here's Ernie Broglio greeting Stan Musial as he comes in, probably after hitting a home run. It looks like he probably hit a home run.
Yeah.
But Ernie Broglio was the bad guy in that trade because he's the one that the Cardinals traded for Lou Brock.
Well, and Ernie Broglio, I mean, he gets overlooked today, but at the time, I mean, he was a former 21-game winner.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the Cubs thought they were getting a pretty good arm in
Yes,
return.
they did. And we can't leave the Cubs in the 60s without Ron Santo. And I mean, everybody remembers Ron because he was such a good ball player, but he was also their sportscaster, their television color guy for many, many, many years.
He was one of the most vocal Cub fans ever. He lived and died on balls and strikes and outs and hits. And I love that picture of Ron Santo. We put it in a sort of a place of prominence in this exhibit, and he looks darn good in that picture.
Yes, he does. Yes,
Yeah.
he does. And of course, he finally did get voted into the Hall of Fame,
That's
where
right.
he belongs.
Yep.
And the poor guy had such enormous health issues toward the end of his life, but he always remained cheerful.
The perseverance
Yeah.
that he had was it was really remarkable.
Yeah.
And inspiring.
Yeah. We talked about interactive exhibits. Let's go over to your Post-it notes over here because
Sure.
they're not all computerized. Some of them are just good old-fashioned interaction the way we used to do it
That's
as
right.
kids.
We showed you some of the high-tech ones where we had to have computer programmers on hands, but this one we used the old-fashioned Post-it note. And we just asked people, share your favorite baseball memory with us. And we have collected thousands of these Post-it notes. We're here early in the morning, and so we've taken a lot of those off because by the end of the day, this board will be filled. People, are telling us about playing catch with their dad or playing Little League or a memory that their families made at Busch Stadium or Wrigley Field. And one of the things we didn't expect to have happen, we've had little kids who don't yet know how to write.
Yeah.
They draw pictures. They draw pictures of them playing catch with their brother or something, and they post it up here for us. And we're collecting all of those Post-it notes.
Yeah.
We're entering them into a database.
Yeah. Oh,
and,
that's such a great idea.
It's been awesome.
It's going to be a thrill for you guys, especially when this exhibit goes down.
Yeah.
To look back at those sometime, and see
Yeah.
what you created. I'm looking at one here. This is pretty cool. Being at Sportsman's Park in the 50s, watching Stan the Man. We were just talking about him. Oh, and here's one. Go Cubs, cutting school in 1974 for opening day.
That's right.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, good for you guys for doing this because I think, people, like you say, every day you have to take those off because it fills up on
Yeah, that's
a daily
right.
basis.
Sometimes multiple times a day. And you won't believe how high the kids can jump and stick the Post-it notes up high.
The little athletes.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, you can't. This leaves a sour taste in a lot of
Here we
people's
go.
mouths. 1998, when Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa were battling it out the home run chase. Turns out they were both juicers, and everybody's pretty unhappy about it now. But at the time, I remember how swept up everybody was.
Oh, I certainly was. I went to several games that summer at Busch Stadium, and Mark McGwire hit a home run every time that I went there.
He was a sure thing.
Yeah, and so when we think about the Cardinal-Cub rivalry, we remember 1998 and how awesome that summer was, watching the home run contest. So this is our little section to talk about that. We have a carefully worded little explanation here, but the pieces we have a helmet that Sammy Sosa wore that season, a helmet that Mark McGwire wore. I remember seeing those starting lineups with both the McGwire and Sosa there for sale.
And the home plate.
This is home plate that Mark McGwire was batting from when he hit his 62nd home run. He broke Roger Maris's home run record. And look how beat up that home plate is.
It's remarkable. Like I say, they change the bags out every day, but the home plate stays. They just dust it off and they keep going. Huh?
Dust it off, they paint it up, and they make it look brand new. But it gets a lot of usage.
A lot of cleats have scarred up that home plate.
You better believe it.
And that's kind of neat to see because we always think of the stadium as being such a pristine place taken care of, but it's still dirt and steel. You
better believe it. Yeah, that's right. Here's a little piece of Wrigley Field history. When Sammy Sosa hit his 62nd home run, this is the manual #1 from the scoreboard that somebody hung up that shows that it was a solo home run that day. And so that comes from Wrigley Field.
Yeah, and they do, I don't know if they still do it or not, but forever they did have the manual scoreboard where
That's right.
A fellow would just hang it out there.
Yeah, it's a unique piece from that home run chase.
Albert Pujols, I mean, if it weren't for Stan Musial, he might be the most famous Cardinal.
My gosh, he had the best 10-year run to start a career that anybody has had. And so we have a few pieces here on display, an autographed jersey from Albert's rookie year. Got a cap that he wore as well. Now he's an Angel.
Yeah, I know, it pains all of us.
Yeah.
But you know, I think most Cardinal fans believe that he will always, his most successful years were as a Cardinal, of course, and
Without a doubt.
he'll always be revered that way. I think the team would have probably sacrificed more than it could afford to keep him, and I think everybody agreed, well, maybe it was the right thing to do. It was hard.
It's hard.
Maybe it was the right thing to do.
It's baseball is a business.
Hey, you also offer kids and families a chance to get their pictures taken here with. These are photo opportunities, and of course now everybody has a camera because they all have a phone, right?
That's right. So we offer, all sorts of photo ops. We ask folks to take a picture, and they can use the hashtag on social media to let us know that they're out there and enjoying the exhibit. And these are the mascots for each team.
They're really good. They're very lifelike.
Oh yeah, and kids love them. I mean, the mascots they're meant to appeal to a younger audience and let them know how cool each franchise is.
Okay, we can't leave this without looking at Harry Carey, because you talk about a tie-in to both teams. He's about as close as it gets. And there he is.
Harry Carey, I remember running home from school at the end of the day so I could listen to the last few innings of a Cubs broadcast and listen to Harry Carey talk about the Cubbies in the 1980s. He was also the voice of the Cardinals.
Yes,
a lot
he
of
was.
the young folks don't remember
My
that.
whole childhood, I remember listening to him and Jack Buck together.
Oh, my goodness, what a broadcast team.
Oh, yeah.
But Harry always made it fun, and he is featured prominently in this exhibit. Can I tell you about an artifact that got away?
Yeah, we have time.
I didn't get to include in this exhibit.
Yeah.
The National Baseball Hall of Fame has a pair of Harry Carey's glasses. And I wanted that artifact to be part of this exhibit. I missed out on it. It's part of a traveling exhibit that's going on all year long through the National Baseball Hall of Fame. But boy, what an artifact.
No kidding, because those are so iconic.
That's right.
You know, when you see those pop bottle glasses that he used to wear, those are iconic. Good luck. Maybe you'll get it. Maybe you'll get it.
Who knows?
Okay.
There's always next year, right?
Thanks. It's a baseball saying. Sure.
Yeah.
Don't miss the bag, the base, and the baseball from the 2016 World Series Championship Cubs season while you're here. And also, you get a chance to stand between these wonderful murals of the championship Cardinals teams, the championship Cub team, and keep in mind that the rivalry, the Cardinals and the Cubs, is open here at the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Museum through the end of the year. And if you want more baseball, across the street at the library, a smaller exhibit has opened called America's Game in Illinois. With another Illinois story. In Springfield, I'm Mark McDonald. Thanks for watching.
Illinois Stories is brought to you by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by the support of viewers like you. Thank you. For a DVD copy of the program you've just seen, send 1995 to Network Knowledge, P.O. Box 6248, Springfield, Illinois 62708. Be sure to include the program name, subject, and when the program aired. You can also order with your credit card by calling 800-232-3605.